So here we are from across the Atlantic Ocean. I'm over in London, and Frankie's at his offices in New Jersey. This is Frankie and I have talked on other occasions through Zoom, but if you don't know Frankie, you should. He's really one of the most extraordinary young advisors in America. He has led the ACP, which took over from the old Cambridge Advisor Network, and it's just one of the phenomenal fee-only organizations in America. I think America is the only place that really has great fee-only organizations, and Frankie's been the head of one of them. And he's been an early adopter of the Golden Civilization Conversations, had early experiences with it, has read the book. I'm very curious what his thoughts are. And together we have a great announcement we're about to make, and I think I'm gonna toss the ball over to him and let him start it off.
George, wow. I mean, gracious introduction. Thank you. Those are kind words. Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to announce here, and we just recently announced this at our annual conference for the Alliance of Comprehensive Planners, is that our next year, our ACP's conference, we're going to be doing our first ever global co-conference with the Kinder Institute, which I know that everyone, a lot of people within ACP are very excited about. It was something that I wanted to see happen because I recognized the tremendous overlap between our two organizations. Obviously, being, I've been in ACP for a long time, and I've, since I've gotten to know George, you, and the groups of people that you're teaching, the life planning community, there's just a tremendous amount that we can learn from each other. And so we had talked about this we had been kicking around this idea. It's great how it sort of formed so organically.
Sure.
And I'm really excited to see it to come to fruition. I think that, there's going to be so much that the people who are attending can get out of it. I think it's going to be sort of comprehensive and whole experience that's different from most conferences, people have been going to in the past, financial planners and life planners. So yeah, it's going to be October 27th, right? October 27th to the 30th.
Yep.
You're just saying earlier that we have, we're excited to start to put together what this program is going to look like. So I'm incredibly excited, and it was nice to see there was some excitement within ACP. It got a round of applause when we announced it. Woo! And so it's, I think it's going to be awesome. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I've had the opportunity to announce it some over here in London, and everybody's curious. They're really interested. One of the things that I think is going to be really interesting, I mean, we've got life planners in 30 countries on all 6 continents. And what's going to be interesting is to see, not a lot of them know what fee only really is. So I think one of the things they're going to be curious about is, what does that mean? And in America, one of the marks of really great fiduciary care for clients for the last 35 years or so has been, do you belong to one of the great fee-only organizations in America? And ACP is one of them. And a real leader among them. So I'm very curious to see how, they're going to be coming largely, I think, to see the life planning piece, because we haven't had a global conference in a number of years. But it's going to be really wonderful to introduce them to the way you guys do work, the integrity that you have behind your systems.
Yeah, I mean, it's such I love the way you put that. And one thing that struck me as you were describing it was that there's a really common shared value between our two organizations, and that's authenticity. And so I think, both of our communities seek to have an authentic relationship with their clients. And ACP, you're right. I mean, there's a true authenticity to the compensation model, to the commitment to fiduciary. It's almost like we pride ourselves as knowing how kind of the rest of the world sort of works, and we're committed to the values of doing, right by the client and service to the client towards their goals. So I'm looking forward to what we can learn from each other's organizations and each other's members and experience. I mean, it's the stories, I think, too, that always, for me, when I come away from these conferences, just the examples of what other people have either experienced or used in their practices is, just tremendous for my own professional growth and development.
Mm-hmm. And I'm really excited because I know the main theme coming from Kinder Institute will be life planning, but we'll have strong themes on mindfulness and on the golden civilization as well. And I'm already wondering if maybe I should ask Louis to life plan me in my later years, and just have him just show the skills that he's the lead trainer in Europe, and have him show those skills, but actually revealing something of myself in the process. So we're cooking with different ideas. Obviously, strong mindfulness track, strong looking at what life planning brings to civilization all over the world. And then what is it? What is it? How can we make a golden civilization happen in a single generation?
Yep. And, one of the things I think could be, is a real opportunity here is to the extent I like that you're going to have that, mindfulness and a track in that is important, because I think that's such an important element that's missing from, again, general industry. But I think by bringing in the golden civilization as an underpinning to this authentic experience as well, hopefully, I think I've told you in the past is I think a golden civilization in general, it's in order to get more people to talk about it, you almost need more people that know about it, that have experienced and felt it, so that then they will, the same way that, you and I will go and speak to people about it. You could have maybe 100-200 people coming out of this conference now having similar conversations in their communities, with their family, with their friends. And so to me, that seemed like another kind of an opportunity that wasn't even thought of in the first place, but it's clearly a really great one.
No, it's amazing. I mean, there are going to be hundreds of people there, and for them to have this kind of additional, first-time exposure to the golden civilization concept, and many of them are relatively new to mindfulness. So to have that be a stronger theme as well, I think will be interesting. And of course, the life planning piece, your community is very curious about, and some of them are very actively engaged, and others just really want to know. They're thirsty for it. So I think it'll be very exciting.
Yeah.
So tell us some of your experience around the golden civilization, Frankie, because I know you had a first meeting, but you've read the book or much of it, and love to have your thoughts. And I've been doing some pretty interesting stuff over here in Europe the last 3 weeks, and learned a lot from the travels that I've gone through. So
yeah, well, I'm not sure if you know this, but I came to a golden civilization. If you recall, you first described it. I was in your 2-day in Las Vegas back at the AICPA conference a few years ago.
yes.
And so we had the 2-day 7 stages of money maturity workshop, and there you introduced a golden civilization and what you were working on and the concepts behind it. And I remember that you first laid it out, like a touch of inspiration. I was really inspired by what you were talking about and where you're trying to go with it. And so after that, I asked you, I'm like, hey, I kind of told you as much. And I said, keep me updated as you're doing this. I'm looking forward to, the book coming out.
Yeah.
And then we did the 5-day that fall in Ashland, Massachusetts. And then, talk about continuing the inspiration. What went from, first describing it, I don't know if you recall this, but you almost came into our Ashland conference room like a tornado, and you were just writing on the board all these big concepts. And George, you had me on the edge of my seat. I was just I was in love with what you were talking about. And so again, I made it a point to say, George, please, as you get further along on this, please keep me updated. And you did. I appreciate that. You you kept me in the loop and said, hey, we're having people, we're hosting Zoom conversations on this topic, and if you want to participate, and you threw me the lifeline, and I clearly wanted to take it because it had always spoken to me.
Yeah.
And so it's been such the experience, I think, alone of just holding these conversations with you and other very distinguished people with which I respect. I mean, it's been a real, I don't know, really something special for me.
Yeah.
I've really, it's touched me in a pretty strong way. And the outflow of it was, again, early on, you kind of pushed to our group. We talked about the concepts of a golden civilization and hosting these conversations. And you pushed to our group, who wants to try it. And so early on, I raised my hand again, and I without really not knowing totally what I should have been trying, but also realizing that just simply holding the conversation in and of itself, it was impossible to fail, no matter what you did. And so, yeah, I hosted my first golden civilization conversation, and I got together a group of people who, they were a few of them, most of them were close friends, and a couple of them was close. But we had, we essentially hosted a golden civilization according to, asking these questions, and it really spurred on, I think, for me, a rewarding experience and a rewarding conversation with people where, afterwards, people were telling me that it was one of the most important conversations that they felt like they had in years.
Wow.
And it was, it attempted to be authentic. It was, at times it was hard, to stay focused and on track. But it was also one that felt like the container felt right, I think to hold these conversations, you need to have a solid container. And, so for me, that everything up until that point, from you describing it to, getting together, reading the book, then the book obviously coming out, and we can talk about the book, but, the experience, having the experience of hosting the conversation and seeing almost in the people who I knew that again, that almost the touch of inspiration that I had when you first described it to me, I was starting to see in them too. And it was something that, it's almost like lighting the torch in someone. It almost felt like this kindled fire that I bet in all honesty, the area where I my mistake where I dropped the ball was not keeping that lit. I bet you we could probably get it lit pretty quick, but the real knack is keeping up with it.
Yeah.
Keeping that fire going.
Right.
Because it was definitely there.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're working on now, is to really fine tune that. How do you keep the fire going? Because we've now introduced the conversation, I think, several hundred times around the world. I've been party to maybe 75 of them, but a lot of them happening independently. But the thing that we're trying to do, I mean, it's not a bad thing to just introduce the concept. For those people who are here and don't know, I mean, it's based on life planning principles, and it's based on having an inspiring conversation that is not polarized and that leads to action, leads to positive action. So we create a vision of a golden civilization. It turns out that vision, I mean, now I've done it all over the world. I've traveled literally all around the world giving these, and that vision is the same all over the world. It doesn't change. The obstacles change a little bit. For instance, in India, the obstacles will be a little bit more about poverty, a little bit stronger about inequality, but inequality is a strong obstacle in many cultures, most cultures. And in Hong Kong, the issue right now is democratic freedoms. So that comes up a little bit stronger there than elsewhere. So you create a very powerful vision. And I do this because we put a circle around it, and then we look at, well, what are the obstacles, inner and outer? And then we go, okay, so what do we do? Let's get at it. What are the action steps we need to do? So we end with action steps that are very positive and with commitments that people make. And that's the structure of pretty much every meeting. It vacillates a bit so that people keep energized about making a difference. And the kicker, and maybe this is what was inspiring to you, was the notion that let's do it in a single generation. Let's not imagine it hundreds of years. I mean, you might imagine it, but let's make it happen now.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I've realized, I've talked a lot about the Industrial Revolution and how it created this amazing life. Here, you and I are talking, good friends from all, widely, way across the ocean, and just instantaneous to people perhaps all over the world, and that we can do that and live longer and travel and all these things. And so there are amazing things that came out of that revolution, as we know, Industrial Revolution. We're still in the middle of it. And the question I ask is, how come with all the hierarchies of power that we get, all the corporate or government, how come we don't have wisdom right at the top of every single hierarchy of power? If we have a really fabulous system of delivering wonderful things to all of us, wouldn't it naturally be delivering our good hearts and our wisdom at the top? So so the challenge is, how do we make that happen so that democracy is sustainable, so that every corporation that's created, we have a feeling that we can trust them, and that there's honor and good-heartedness there. And one of the things I've been realizing, Frankie, is that maybe what we need is, they have this, is it called ESG now, the socially responsible movement? So in ESG, they're coming up with models. Maybe we need something that goes into the heart of every single corporation. And it's like a human heart that's beating and that's responsible to the community around it, to the environment, to all of its stakeholders, and then also to making a good product and a good profit. But having that humaneness at the center of every single institutional structure that exists in the world, and have it be legislated that way. So it has to be. And then maybe we could finish this work of the Industrial Revolution, which is to bring the very best of humanity out into the world. So that's been one of my insights just in this trip. What do you think?
Wow, I love that idea. That is an amazing idea. And you know what? I think there's never been a better time for that to become a reality than now, because I mean, for all intents and purposes, we've never been more evolved as a race of people, as a species, than we are at the moment. And so you'd think, evolutionarily speaking, we would evolve to do something that's going to be beneficial for us as a species for the long term. And creating a golden civilization does that. And maybe this is one of these steps. It could get more acceptance, because I think who could argue with that? It's really, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, heck, the U.S. Supreme Court, didn't they say that a corporation is a person? So it might as well give it a heart.
Well, it needs a heart if we're gonna be sustainable, because otherwise, I mean, otherwise you get climate change, you get wars, you get.
And George, I think these are great points, and I think, and this actually touches on what I was going to ask you, because the question I have with you is, how much in your conversations with people and holding these conversations, how much does it ever center back to the self and living out your own life plan as being some kind of prerequisite for, or is, where does that fit in? Because to me, as we're talking about how do we give corporations a heart, corporations at the end of the day are owned by people and run by people. And so the hope would be that the people that are owning it and running these companies, it's almost like they're the heart that's sort of required in all this. Right. And so I'm curious that tied to back to the self and the individual. And I was curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I think, and it does come up a lot in all of the conversations, hugely. But you do realize that even if you were to change the hearts of all of those people, as long as the organization is structured so that profit is actually more important than the various fiduciary responsibilities. I mean, we've seen it in our own industry. We know that the people that are on the kind of the product side of everything are good people. We know them; they're good people, and we've hesitated to criticize the system that they're in because they feel personally attacked in some way. But the truth is that a system that doesn't have that fiduciary care as part of its responsibility, so it's embedded in the law, so it's actually in the institution itself. Without that, you can have an institution of great people, and still it's skewed toward cutting corners and not being responsible toward all the stakeholders, because it's not required to, even though it might make good business for many organizations. So
Yeah,
so
I agree.
the notion is, let's actually form that heart, and probably the ESG community is creating great ideas around it, but let's embed it everywhere, and let's legislate it so that it's in every institution there is. And I think it should be in nonprofits too, because if you have a nonprofit that's just going at one point of view, and it ends up that point of view is harming other groups, well, why are we giving them a nonprofit status for that? Shouldn't they have the care of all as part of their responsibility? And then we could begin to trust the organizations we have. I think the issues of distrust, the worries about war will go down greatly, the violence will go down, pollution will go down, cynicism will go down. Anyway, that was that. So, but you were asking about what about individuals? So let's talk about that. So what's really interesting is, again, all over the world, do you know what probably the top 2 obstacles people mention to a golden civilization are?
Money, corruption.
Okay, now that would be a logical thing, and those would be 2 things that I would think of. I might think of media too. I mean, they're in there, they're in the mix, and certainly in the top 10, but usually the ones that come up more often than any others are greed and fear.
Yeah.
And so right there, people are saying, yeah, I know politicians are struggling. They aren't able to deliver to us because of the way the system's set up. They aren't able to deliver to us what we really want. But I think it's more the arrogance of greed and fear that is driving people. And so right away they're saying, if we can change these internal qualities, we can make a huge difference. So we've been introducing mindfulness as part of the conversation, and people have been really intrigued with it. So I think that there's a real understanding that I'm part of the problem, as well as the system is. And then life planning. I mean, of course, there's so many life planners who are introducing this into their communities. And they know that a lot of greed and fear gets addressed when you're living your life plan. If you're living your life plan, your fear diminishes tremendously. And your greed does, because you really got what you want, right? I mean, don't you find that with your clients?
Yep.
What do you find shifts for your clients when they're living their life plan?
There's a sense of comfort and security. They're at ease. There's less of, there's not anxiety. There's not, and it's interesting because for the clients that I've helped with their life plans and build their torches, for the ones that have been able to follow through on them and to live them out, and the one that I've been successful with, it's each time it's, for me, it's almost like what continues to light my own torch. It's so exciting,
Yeah.
And even from my own perspective, living it. I mean, I always say it's personal to me, because I've gone through the life planning process, and I can literally tell you what it feels like to experience it myself.
Right.
That reward that comes from, I mean, it's just a slight shift in, I mean, it's mindset. You're promotion to me of mindfulness in general, and your, the wisdom behind its practice in general, incorporating it into your life. It allows you to slow down. It allows you to focus on what's really the important priorities. And I think, that's a key that I'm seeing in a lot of my clients. Again, slowing down, living their life plan. And so I fully agree with you. I think within a golden civilization, that's part from when I think of what a golden civilization is. I think it's a civilization of people living their life plans. Everyone is what you and I both know is how unique everyone is. Each individual, characteristic or thing that, drives you in life. And, I think within a golden civilization, you have a civilization of people, a society of people who are honest and authentic with what their life plan is and are going about and pursuing it and living it. And, that would truly be golden, I think.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. I'm going to tell you one more concept that I've kind of picked up on this journey in the last couple of months. But I love your emphasis on authenticity here, because I think that is what happens when we're not really living who we know we're meant to be, is we feel inauthentic inside ourselves, and our life feels a little bit out of joint. And that's true for most of us, because most of us haven't really confronted, why am I not writing the novel that I want to write? Or why am I not creating the business that I want to create? Or why am I not spending more time with my kids when that's what's most important to me? So those kinds of things, when you actually do them, you feel this rush of freedom and authenticity. You mentioned, the first two things you mentioned were a sense of security and comfort and ease, really. And there's this thing, I know you know this because you construct portfolios as part of your work. Although I'm sure you leave a lot of that to the wizards at Dimensional and other places. But when you construct a portfolio, if you can reduce the risk of that portfolio dramatically without diminishing the rate of return at all, is that an extraordinary thing?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't it? It's amazing. It's what we strive for as financial people. So if we can reduce the risk and yet keep that rate of return strong, man, that's fantastic. Well, imagine this: reducing the risk on a major portion of your portfolio that you're holding for your clients, reducing it to zero, and not only holding the rate of return, but doubling the rate of return at the same time. Now, how would that be?
I mean, sign me up.
Yeah. Well, that's what life planning does. If you think about it, it reduces the risk, right? That's the comfort and ease that you were talking about, and the security, but the excitement you were talking about as well. I mean, that's the energy that comes out. So you get all this energy, right? So right on.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it's really invigorating. I think you always lay it out. I mean, that's why I think it's so fundamental to the golden civilization too, is because, again, for myself personally, I see the energy that I have, almost the added energy of just living out my life plan as well, to, have a golden civilization be front on, keen of mind. It's like I'm living out the elements of my life plan that I continue to consider, I continue to think about and strive for, that I think I have that security to know that I can, put energy towards, and I have extra energy to put towards something like a golden civilization. It starts on the self to a way. It's get yourself in order so that you feel like you have put your mask on first before you put it on your child. And then once you've done that, almost like an obligation to reach out to your community to, extend energy that way to make your, and benefit your community by. I don't think any one person is going to do it. The more people that are living out their life plans that are also feeling this invigoration, this energy to reach into their community. My grandfather, I recall him always telling me, many hands make light work. And like, that's probably a fundamental of, building a golden civilization.
Yeah. Let's do it. All of us. Let's do it. Great. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we close?
I mean, I guess I want to thank you, just for this opportunity to get up and speak with you, but, thank you for the guidance and support and the inspiration over the years. I mean, it's been an honor for me to get to know you pretty well. And I am so excited to be collaborating with you. You're someone that I consider a close friend, and, I'm looking, I'm not going to let you down. I look forward to helping you with this.
Thanks, Frankie. That's fabulous. I can't wait. And I know we got a lot of planning to do to make a great conference next year, but I'm so looking forward to it.
Yep.
Thanks so much.
All right, George. Thank you.
Yep. I'll see you soon. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.